Okay, I guess we are live. Whoever is listening to this, so welcome everyone. Just heads up that this live stream will be in English, and if you want to ask questions, go ahead. Either English, Polish, or any other language one of us can understand. We also understand Russian, so some of us can translate it. So hi everyone, and this is the first podcast and the first live we're doing here with the folks at 11 Sigma, and for many of us except Michał Miszczyszyn, this is actually the first time they're presenting live. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, let us know if it works in the comments.
Yes, exactly. Like, let us know if you can actually hear us, and if no one is here and if no one is listening to this, then there will be a video on YouTube afterwards that people can watch.
And I can see there are at least a few people listening to us on YouTube, so that's good.
Awesome, that's great. Good. So, by the way, this is a Q&A session, and I will quickly run an introduction with everyone. So each of us will introduce themselves. We'll say a few words about how long they've been working remotely and what's their primary style of work, and have they been experimenting with some different ways of working remotely. And the whole topic of today's live is that, what are the different ways we've been doing remote work, and how to actually organize it. So well, I guess without further ado, let's start with introductions. And how about we start with Sergey?
All right. So my name is Sergey Radzishevskii. I'm from Russia, and I've been working remotely for the last 70 years. Yeah, I guess that's around 7 years. So I have a family. I have kids, and that's why I can sit in one place. And I guess talking about the style of my work, so I prefer to have my own comfortable home office. I'm person who cannot work from cafe or bars because I'm also kind of distracted. So I really like my office. I really like the comfortable that nobody is kind of distracting me all the time. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how far should we go. Yeah, I will stop here because then we'll discuss some particular questions.
Good, great. Okay, thank you very much. Michał Miąskowski, go ahead. Your turn.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Michał. I've been working remotely for the last about 2 years, and that's the exact time that I worked in IT industry, because I switched from biotechnology, which I graduated from, and my preferred way of remote work is mixed, actually. I've been doing some remote working directly from home for probably a year, and then started going to cafes. My last pick is a co-working space, and I go there probably twice a week, maybe 3 times. So it's not like full time. I'm currently stated in Warsaw. If somebody wants to work together or just hang out, and yeah, that's it for now.
Good, thanks. Michał Miszczyszyn, will be you next.
Okay. So my name is Michał Miszczyszyn. I have a blog, typeofweb.com. So some of our listeners might know me. I've been working fully remotely for 5 years, and at least partially remotely since like ever. Because even when we used to have an office in Gdańsk, where I live, part of our team was remote. So I always like this kind of lifestyle. And yeah, I think we'll discuss it further along the live stream, but I really enjoy working from home, and I think it's I've tried different options, but I think working from home is my favorite one. So yeah, I guess we'll have a discussion here.
Yeah. Good. Gotcha. All right. Cool. Thank you, Jakub Rożek, and then I'll close this introduction session.
Yeah. So I'm Jakub Rożek, as Chris stated. I've been working fully remotely for almost 4 years now, and similarly to Sergey, I prefer to stay in some isolated place when there is some peace and silence, because I cannot quite focus in a crowded room. But since I am traveling quite a bit, I happen to stay in some co-working spaces, restaurants, and cafes. But during such times, I am rather less productive than I would normally be if I were in an isolated space. And I had that privilege to visit quite a few countries during that time, and perhaps I will elaborate a bit more on that in the latter part of this meetup or stream, whatever.
Cool. Thank you. Right. So about myself, I've been working remotely for about 8 years or so already, and some of this was with a similar time zone with a company in London, and then most of my career I spent on working with actually with people with companies across the ocean, and there were different overlaps. The biggest time zone difference I've experienced was working for a while from San Francisco with Poland, and that was an interesting experience. I guess in terms of like my style of work, I did experiment a bit with co-working spaces, but mostly I'm a fan of a home office, and it's a matter of a good setup to actually make it work, which I can tell a bit more later. Good. So we have some questions that we've received from people earlier, but like I said before, and I see some people are joining and some are leaving in the meantime. So if you haven't heard that before, this is a Q&A session, and we were talking about different ways of working remotely. So feel free to ask us any questions, and we'll try to answer to them. Good. So I guess for the first ones, we've had a question from Michał Miszczyszyn's Discord, and this is about leading or living a nomadic lifestyle. And the question was, how does the nomadic lifestyle affects one's relations with other people? And I quote here: especially if you're not in the long-term relationship over 30 plus, it will be particularly difficult for me to meet new people and make new friends every 3 months or so. This is interesting. And would anyone want to try to answer this question? Try to raise a hand, maybe, if you have some ideas.
I think Jakub Rożek is the best one to answer, isn't he?
Yeah,
I'm traveling mostly, yes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Maybe Michał raised his hand, so let's do Jakub Rożek, and then Michał has some.
Yeah, I'm under 30, so I might not quite apply fully here. But I can kind of like imagine if that when you are like over 30 and most of your folks are in some relationship, have kids and so on, it might be actually quite tricky to have such a life. When you are still young, as me, it's not that difficult. And there's actually another reason it's quite easy to make friends when you are under 30s, because you meet plenty of peers in your age in like restaurants, clubs, and so on. So it's not particularly difficult, but I cannot quite tell how it is when you are over 30. I think it doesn't quite matter as long as you don't go to some places when there are only like very old folks. It won't really matter for most of the time. And you'll find some peers there as well, because there are actually plenty of folks that are over 30 or even 40 or even 50 that have a nomadic lifestyle. I think it's more about the mindset than the age itself. But I can imagine it being difficult when you know that, for instance, you don't have a kid and something like that. You have that fear of missing out kind of a feeling. But it's not particularly difficult. There are plenty of various apps these days like Badu and all that stuff. So I would say it's pretty easy, and they work all in the same countries. The popularity differs. Like for instance, in Southeast Asian countries, there are slightly different instant messaging apps. Like WhatsApp is less popular. There are some Chinese alternatives like WeChat, but Telegram is gaining popularity as well. And there is a nice feature there called like connect me with the people in the nearby. Where basically you have like a list of folks that are very close to you, and you can reach out to them if you would like to. So yeah, I would say that like instant messaging apps and overall some apps where you can link with people are probably the easiest ways to do that, because there are no barriers. Like you don't really need to meet someone in person initially. You can have a chat first and then go ahead and meet. So it's easier if you are like a introvert.
Cool. Thank you. And Michael, you wanted to add something to this, right?
Yeah, I just remembered that I actually worked a bit longer remotely than 2 years, because I was a technical salesman before, so I was kind of living a nomadic life for half a year, and yeah, that affects relationships, and you definitely have to put much more effort to sustain them. But this makes you change the friends around you. So you actually spend more time with people that you care about, which might be different to when you're at the one place all of the time. And it's really easy to just like hang out with a person if you're 5 minutes from them. So definitely can make relationships even better if you put more energy into it. But like Jakub said, just use a communicator and you should be good to go. Just make sure I've met my my partner in this kind of nomadic life, so it's a proof that it can work out.
And by the way, I wanted to add, Sergey, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, talking about people over the 30s with kids, I still think it's kind of depends on a person. I know like at least 2 pairs like that also actually it's like my ex-workers who like had like for 2 kids. Like every pair had 2 kids, and they like one guys. They travel like every winter. They moved to Asia. They moved a couple of times to South Africa. And when like they had 1 kid, and it was like 4 years or so, I was like, okay, it's probably not so comfortable, but it's okay. But when they got another kid, and it was like 2 years old, so it was like 6 and 2, and we said, no way, like you won't go this year. And they like going to South Africa and spend there like half of probably like 4 months or so. So it's still possible, but depends on the person. I would probably I didn't do this because I understood that for me it won't worth it. I spent much more nervous with my kids rather than get some satisfaction from this trip. So yeah, I'd rather wait for a vacation and go there without work.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, I think that kids cannot change the environments that quickly. In particular, when you move, like there is a huge cultural difference, and also in terms of weather and bacteria and all that stuff between different continents. And like it's basically like an adult sometimes cannot fully sustain the conditions there for a longer period of time, and kids would suffer even more, I think. And in particular, when they reach like 6 or 7 and they start some school or something, they it's not sustainable anymore for them to move around as quickly as they could when they were younger. And as said, there is also this health aspect that one has to take into the account, because the healthcare in some of these countries is quite poor or non-existent. So once you are an adult, you can basically power through some illnesses, but kids are usually more prone to some severe illnesses, and finding some healthcare might be a huge issue in some of those countries. So that's another aspect to take into the account. So basically, what I'm saying is that once you have kids, it's way more difficult.
Bear with me, by the way. But bear with me. I have to see who is. This is remote work in action. I have to see who's knocking at my door. Go, carry on.
Yeah, so it's just tricky to.
Yes, our host is gone.
Kids. Yeah, our host is gone. That was all planned. That was all planned out in advance. That someone would knock at 15 minutes after the meeting kicked off. So
I had a friend who was planning to do a fully nomadic lifestyle with his children. Their plan, him and his wife, their plan was to homeschool their children so they could travel while they were not missing school because there was no school, and they wanted to travel across Europe, and it was supposed to start in the year and a half ago, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah,
so
but
kids went to school, and now they have to wait like a few years at least for them to finish the school.
I wonder how this would impact the relationships. I mean, kids usually they're actually linked to people. They get bound to people quite easily. So at least I remember when I was a kid, it was so. So it might be actually quite difficult. The school aspect might be actually not that tricky because all schools pretty much operate remotely in Europe right now, more or less, depending on the situation with pandemic. So it's workable, but how that affects human relationships, that's
this is a good question. We have some other questions, by the way, on the list. So let me wrap this up quickly. I just wanted to add something that I personally, and some of us personally know. I think the best example of a nomadic lifestyle is our common friend Phil Sturgeon, who is now making an effort on reforestation. This folk is like the perfect example of that because he's pretty much homeless, as in he mostly rides on his bike around Europe, and he changes places from one day to another. He can cross 2 borders, and it's tricky. I talked with him about how he leads this life, but on the other hand, and this was a question about relationships. You meet a lot of people. There's a movement or a phenomenon called co-living these days, which is adjusted to remote workers, and it's like renting a common space with people who work remotely. And about the schools, I've heard from some of my friends who actually went to Malta for a couple of years, and their kids adjusted very quickly. From as a parent, I think it's sometimes the adjustability might be in parents sometimes rather than in children. Like children are very adaptable. How that affects their future, I'm not quite sure, but this is some of this is doable. You have those van lifers who some of them actually travel with kids, and they're doing well. There's benefits and pros and cons of this, obviously. But yeah, well, so let's see another question from the people we've had before, and it was also around basic things you can do about how do you actually start nomadic life, and I think by nomadic life the person means just living in travel or living in different places. And there's a couple of questions like, how do you even start this? Are there any websites, groups, and forums for such people? And is there any general pros and tips for actions you need to take before you visit countries? And is there certain platforms for renting apartments adjusted for remote works, and this kind of more technical aspects? We're still in the area and realm of this digital nomad way of leading remote, of having remote work and leading that kind of lifestyle. So anyone would like to share their experience with this?
Yeah,
I can share.
Okay, go.
Yeah. So when it comes to platforms, I think all the major renting platforms have this kind of functionality where you can filter places by the capability to work. It includes Booking or Airbnb and other as well. So I think it got really popular in the past few years. So they just included it. So it's really simple to find a good place for working. When it comes to co-working offices, there are also apps which help you find the co-working offices or nice cafes from which you can work with free Wi-Fi. I think we can link a few of them later on in the comments or on the video description because I don't have them at hand right now. But so the first part of this is about the technical aspect, and the first part was about whether there are any steps that we need to take or we can take before visiting any particular countries. And when it comes to traveling across European Union, it's really simple because all of the informations are on the internet, either on the website of the European Union, or even, for example, if you're from Poland, you can visit the Foreign Ministry website and find information about most of the countries. If there are any preconditions you need to meet, or if you can just travel to the country, or if you need to do something beforehand. Yeah, Michał, you wanted to, I kind of interrupted you.
No worries. I would say maybe either easier way in or just jump right into the water. So easier way in is maybe start working from cafes or just around the town to see if this fits you, because you can start moving around the world and all of a sudden you'll figure out, okay, I cannot focus at all. So I would do that, or jump right into the water, which means just go to the country. And like, you don't have to work when you're traveling. You can travel to the place and then just do what you would do normally, but just in a different place, and visit all of the interesting places after work. So figure your way yourself is probably I think I would do, and I did. And if we're talking about some tools, either like hardware or websites, interesting websites, like Michał said, all of the major providers these times give the opportunity to do that. And you need a laptop, you need a good backpack. This is what I can recommend, definitely. And maybe some wireless router, but with smartphones having the ability to do that, it's not even necessary. So
especially if you're traveling across Europe, then you can use the European Union roaming. If you're a citizen of European Union, that's really awesome. And it's easier. It makes it so much easier. You can work without any additional cost for the internet from basically any country.
Yeah, and Jakub, you had some experiences in Asia, and I remember some interesting stories. Like, first, how do you prepare to go to travel and work in Asia? That's like first one, and then I remember you told me once that you pretty much work in the middle of nowhere sometimes, right? Going
it was
around
difficult
with a scooter
sometimes.
Can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, I'll first of all start with the tooling that I use. Like, as Michał Miszczyszyn mentioned, I also use the side of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the one that Poland serves, and it's actually pretty up to date. They really do their best to keep it updated, and even if it's like less popular country, you will find the most relevant information for a Polish citizen. So I always suggest starting with that. And overall, I would say that it's best to avoid the Googling stuff, because it's some of that information might be unconfirmed, so you might get into a trouble potentially. It's good to Google for stuff like what's the best mobile provider, if you need like what's the cheapest internet package and all that stuff. but like checking what the preconditions are, like what do I need to have in order to enter that country, is something that it's best to verify on, look up on our Ministry of Foreign Affairs site. Then when it comes to stuff like apartments, accommodation, and all that stuff, if you are planning to stay for a shorter period of time, then probably booking.com, Trivago, or Airbnb and all that stuff is best. But if you are planning to stay for a longer period of time, like say 3 months or so, then it might be actually better to rent the apartment from a local. The only inconvenience you have is that you need to sign some contract, and that you wouldn't be able to move around the country, because unless you want to pay for a few spots. But if you plan to stay in a larger city for a longer period of time, then that's probably the way to go, because it's just much cheaper. You don't need to pay any markup and all that stuff. Then when it comes to like work there, it's something. Actually, I got one more like note, because some folks will probably want to buy insurance and all that stuff. So it's actually nice to verify all that information about where not to go. Our Ministry of Foreign Affairs provides the list of regions within a given country that they consider unsafe. And it's pretty important to note that, because the insurance providers usually have that clause in their contract that they won't cover any cost when you go into the zone that's unrecommended by our government.
Do you remember some examples, like from
there are
the
plenty
Crimea?
There are plenty of them actually, because like for instance, in Malaysia there is this area, I think Borneo, where basically there is this nosach. People go there to see that nosach sundajski. I don't know what the English name of that animal is, but it's used in memes in Poland, and that area is actually considered such, because overall these countries tends to be quite divided between different nations, and the borders are often artificial. So when you get to a certain border, you might it might be a place where war takes place or something like that, or trafficking and all that stuff. So it's just good to verify that information beforehand. And in Southeast Asia countries, there are actually lots of such areas that are considered like they are basically disputed. Well, there is like, for instance, in Indonesia, you have plenty of, there is like a Papua, I don't remember the English name of that country, but basically there are territories where that are claimed to be by someone else, kind of like with Ukraine and Russia, where they claim to be their territory and Ukraine claim to be their territory. I mean, Crimea and all that stuff. So there are such territories pretty much everywhere, and it's just worth knowing, because you might simply get into a trouble. And as Chris mentioned, I happen to work in a few different spots, some weird ones, some not. And the internet is usually a problem. Like I remember working in a jungle in Bali, and the internet there was like, I don't know, 1 megabit download or even worse. And there are like frequent power outages. So for instance, in the middle of the night, there was like entirely dark. I didn't see a thing. There are basically power outages. And overall, there is a problem with power. Like even in some cities, you simply have no power for a longer periods of time. So what I usually carry 2 huge power banks, so I can charge my notebook while I work. And it's also good to have some surge protection, because the current is not quite stable in those countries, so your charger might basically break. I think Jakub J actually had such an accident on Philippines, where there was some current instability and his charger just died. So it's good to have that. There are actually some portable ones that you can feed into the power plug. And obviously you need to check for power sockets, because they are all different everywhere. So I have like a huge portable power socket adapter, where I can use it to feed it feeds basically any power socket in the world. So it has like 4 parts, and I just switch it. So yeah, that's.
Did you
That's
consider
interesting.
buying solar panels? Maybe, like, would it be even doable for those to provide enough energy to work for laptops?
I didn't actually consider that, but it might be possible because it's usually sunny there. But I'm not sure. I haven't considered that, so I cannot quite comment on that whether it would work or not. But I think.
Yeah, I have a question about. Okay, I have a question to Jakub about the agreements that you signed for the apartments. Were there any particular requirements for that, or did you just use your passport and that's enough? Like, what's the process?
Well, you usually need to pay something in advance, so that's the only like caveat. And obviously passport, but honestly, passport is required pretty much everywhere. And you check into the hotel, they also want to scan your passport. So I wouldn't consider this as a drawback. The only caveat is that you usually need to pay in advance for that stay. But as said, it's actually not unusual because when you rent an apartment via Airbnb, you also need to pay in advance. So it's mostly so that. I think it's more difficult to sign such an agreement because not everyone wants to rent for just 3 months or so, and that I think might be a potential issue. And when you are visiting the country for the first time or the city for the first time, it's usually nice to pick something for a shorter period of time so you can verify the district, see how it is, what the restaurants are, and if you need a co-working space, then can also see if there are any. So that's why I think it might be nicer to stay for in a one spot for a shorter period of time, because you can also, like, when you work, you usually don't have unlimited time to do sightseeing if you are up for it. Then if you live in different districts, it's just easier for you to visit all the tourist attractions you would like to, because you don't lose as much time in traffic jams, for instance, and they are sometimes massive in those countries. So yeah, that's I think the nicest way to visit the entire city. And also one has to keep in mind that some of these cities aren't like as small as Warsaw, but like they have millions of the populations are counted in millions. So like in Jakarta, for instance, like 32 millions. The whole agglomeration is like the whole municipality is about 32. It's the second biggest. So it's like almost the size of the Poland, basically. So yeah, and the traffic jams are huge there. So that's why it's nice to visit a few districts before deciding on settling in a single one.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
So the work in like the like I guess the main takeaway from us is for people living in European Union, traveling between countries in Europe is pretty much a homogeneous experience. But then, for people in EU, going outside is a bit sometimes a bit more work, but it's it's still pretty much the world globally is. It's easy to work and travel. Like that's, I think, with some challenges. By the way, Sergey had a good question in the meantime, and maybe that's a good question for everyone. With your work styles, what is your most terrible experience? Like whether that's the remote work related, at home, or if it's workation or travel and working. Which do you remember a situation which was like the worst case for you? Who would like to answer this first? The worst for me, by the way. So before Michał and I think Michał and Sergey wanted, but the worst for me was a couple first years working remotely and adjusting to this work style with all the isolation and all that stuff. But the isolation wasn't even the worst. That they actually think that slowed me down and blocked for a while was the carpal tunnel syndrome that I got from not adjusting my working setup correctly. And there were some questions about work ergonomics that we can talk about later. But I think from all the experiences I had, things related to like the physical health was the main drawback. And then once I got through this, I learned like how to make the setup way better than it used to be. Yeah. So, but Michał and Sergey, I guess you wanted to tell us about something.
Okay, I'll start. Probably the most terrible thing that happened to me was like when I found my first remote company. I was like 25 years old, so still I was quite young. Still, I like to have some parties, and this company like required like 8 hours of crossover. So basically, I worked in the US schedule, and every Friday when my friends got some party, I had to work, and I suffered a lot. But again, when like I get a family and I had kids, right now it's much easier because in order to get a party, it requires much more time. So you need to plan it ahead, maybe like two months ahead. Then create some votes in such channels. Can you make a party at this time? And still at the end, like when 10 of your friends say yes, you will see only 3 of them. So yeah, it's not such a big problem nowadays.
Yeah, the overlap was one of the questions, but like, how do we manage? And maybe we can tackle that later. But how do we manage time zone differences? Let's continue with the question about like the worst experience you've had on, and maybe Michał Miąskowski next. Like you raised the question, but I'm curious about all of you. Like if you can recall, Michał Miszczyszyn and Jakub Rożek, if you can recall any of those experiences, it'd be very interesting to hear that.
I do not recall any terrible experiences at all. I mean, working remotely everything has been great. Just like, with flying colors and stuff. Never better. I mean, I remember terrible experiences working in the office, that's for sure. I hated it. Like, I would never go back. Yeah, the worst thing that happened to me while traveling and working was that I was hungry and there was no shop around. So that was the most terrible experience.
Michał, go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with another Michał that remote work itself, like, I don't think it can do you bad. It's probably your personality. Like if you tend to like to be around people, then probably working in the apartment will make you feel bad. So it's kind of adjusting your lifestyle and your preferences to the remote work. And accidents happen in different scenarios. So if you're traveling and you don't have to be working, somebody could rob you. So I feel like just remote work gives you freedom to do whatever you want, and if you use it correctly or not, it's really more up to you.
Jakub, do you recall any experiences maybe related to like the abroad visits?
Honestly, I don't remind myself anything like particularly negative. I would actually, I have a similar experience as Michał Miszczyszyn, where basically all the positive sides of remote travels and everything outweigh the negatives. And obviously there were some stressful situations because when you enter a new country, that there are sometimes some checks happening. I remember I had one in Dubai where I was with a friend there and we had a very thorough security check where basically they're unrolling the cigarettes. So it was like, it felt weird. And I also had one situation where I could run into trouble because I was very, very, also at the very same airport in Dubai. I was very tired, and a pair, I think, from Germany or some other country approached me and my friend and asked us whether we could take the luggage with us. And I didn't quite realize what was happening. And then a friend of mine told me that they could have some drugs somewhere there or something like that. And that they just wanted us to go through security checks. But I was so tired that I wasn't quite thinking, and I wanted to actually do a favor. And yeah, I could run into some trouble. So this was like probably the stupidest thing I could have done in when traveling. But luckily I didn't, because a friend of mine was there and he was more like cautious and more negative towards people. So yeah. But other than that, I didn't have anything like very negative. So it's only positive memories. Even though I am a Pole, I don't have many like negative memories. So
That's interesting. So I thought I thought someone would mention the main struggle people have with working remotely is isolation, for example, and this, how do you keep being motivated, or getting down from time to time. That's like if you read statistics about remote work, this is what comes up first on people's list.
I think it's when you don't go out at all, like you order food home and do all that stuff, or basically you start your day, sit at home in front of your screen, you order some food, and you basically don't go out at all. Then it's might be depressive, but I don't do that. So, but if I did, then I guess I would be on the same boat with them, with those people that aren't too happy. But it's all about, I think, when you travel, it's actually quite easy because you always do some sightseeing, usually eat in a restaurant, so you are actually surrounded by people, and you can have a chat with them and share some experiences, get to know their culture. So it's much easier when you move around. But when you're at home, and it's like the weather is quite poor outside, then might get tricky. So my advice would be to try to go to a restaurant, for instance, if you can. That's already something you could do, and avoid like ordering food online, even if you feel lazy, because this will at least force you to go out if you don't have any like will or desire to do so, or go to a gym or something like that. So basically do some activities that force you to go out if you cannot find if you need to have a sense of being connected with others.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because nothing prevents you to meet your friends in the evening, and you, like with remote work, you have more free time because you don't spend time on moving to the office every day. And like I don't have this problem at all because I basically have plus 2 extra hours that I can spend to meet my friends. That is kind of even more probably more interesting for me rather than to see like my coworkers at some scale. So yeah. And again, some Jakub mentioned the gym. Like nowadays, gym. That's it is something that I like. I understand that I must do because again, you like sit all the time, and it's just to be healthy. So it's another like thing that help you get socialized.
Oh yeah, and for me personally, that was the getting socialized and actually sitting. I went through a phase where I stayed too in my home too much, and when it happens, and it's similar in every situation, but basically the brain compresses everything that looks very similar to one day, so it's very like the changing environment or making the environment as pleasant as possible is a good way to actually avoid this burnout. And even if even things like going out to a gym just to socialize with some people sometimes is a better idea than not meeting anyone. Going for a group gymnastics or something like that might be actually an idea for someone who is struggling with loneliness aspect, because you don't have your office friends or actual friends that you meet day to day. But being mindful of time, that knowing that we have only 15 minutes, I wanted to ask some of the questions. So there is a question about the time zone difference and how do we deal with this. There's another one with the sense of belonging, but also there is some questions about health aspects and the home office setup. So we talked about working outside home, but maybe let's focus more on the home office. And one of those questions was how do you avoid injuries and health issues working at home? Like, do you have, and no, I guess none of us is ergonomics expert or a health expert, but do you do something extra or particular to avoid, for example, neck pains or hand pain? Like, I've had this carpal tunnel, so I went through it. But any of you do something extra, or would you recommend something?
Well, as I said, I does gym all the time, and I know if I stop it, then my back starts hurts. And before the gym, I used to do some yoga, although I'm not a yoga expert at all, and yoga is something that never can catch my attention, but at the same time, it's great for your back. So yeah, if you don't have time or just don't want to go to gym, I would recommend to start doing yoga. And by the way, I also try to start working with when you stay, but I try that, so I kind of couldn't do this for probably half of the day. But yeah, now I can get back, so I just figure out that it's more healthy, but I gave up. I still prefer a chair.
Mm-hmm. And maybe someone can later extend this desk setup, but now Michał is raising his hand, so I'll give it to
Yeah, I wanted to add to that that I have some back problems in general. It hurts, but it was so much worse when I used to work from the office. Working from home allowed me to buy the equipment that I wanted and adjust it exactly to my needs. And in case I don't know, my back gets tired, or my neck gets tired, I can always take my laptop and go work from a couch or whatever, or even lay in bed, what I sometimes do. So I mean, working from home is awesome, and I think this is the best thing that could ever happen to my back, actually.
Michał, go ahead, and I also have some hints I could share.
Yeah, I agree with all of the folks said. One thing I would add is address all of your health problems, because working at home will just double them or triple them. Like, even the smallest ones, take a scan of your back, whatever needs to be done, and take care of yourself, even when it comes to medical terms. But as for everyday living, having flexible hours, if you have flexible hours, allows you to move around if you want. So there's nobody standing behind you and telling you to work for 8 hours with no breaks. So yeah, I try to go to the gym twice a week. I have this roller here.
Oh man, I just wanted to show mine. Yeah. I was about to say you cannot do this in the office. You cannot just stop and ride on them.
And you can wear pajamas in the house, so you move more freely when doing this kind of stuff. Yeah, and this also adds to mental health. Taking a walk not only makes your back feel better, but your head as well. So basically, doing breaks will make you feel better, and having an ergonomic chair. But that's kind of a given.
I think and thanks by the way, there is some basic stuff like get the right chair. And we talked with Artem, one of the engineers at Seven Sigma, that getting a good chair is very expensive. Actually, like most of the chairs that are available on the market have some drawbacks, and like for example, their arm support isn't adjustable, which was one of the reasons I got pains in my elbows at some point, like because I bought a chair from a known brand that makes furniture, and so that like getting your home office equipment right is the first thing. But then just common sense things like take breaks, and for some time I started working in batches, so like 1.5 hour, maybe 2 hours deep focus, and then taking a break, stretching, maybe yoga, meditation, and that goes along mental health and physical health. Like meditation, for example, is very good to clear your mind and just focus on nothing, and you see your thoughts kind of, and you try to not focus on them too much, but you see how many of them are in your head, so it's sometimes helpful. Then there is this time zone difference that someone asked, like how do you cope with that? And there are struggles, but there are also benefits of this the fact that you have this time slot when you don't have to be on those meetings, for example, right? You know that this time is much more flexible. You can use it however you want, well, depending on like if you have kids maybe, or you live with children at home, or whatever else, right? But then you can take care of yourself by going to a massage, or by going to the pool, or to the gym in the middle of the day, where while working in the office, you like some offices actually provide this, and it's okay at some companies, but some other they don't. And then with respect to that, this is just more flexible. But I think one needs to be mindful of their health, both physical and mental anyway. And I think regardless of whether that's remote or office or hybrid or whatever else, like any pain is just going to block your work and your happiness. So
priority. If I can, I want to add something to that. Like we can have ergonomic setups at home, but if we go abroad, if we go nomadic, it's probably good to do some kind of similar setup as well. I don't have one yet, but I plan to. I think our one of our friends, Jakub Miąskowski, has external display for his laptop, so he can actually like stand straight. So that would be one thing to buy. Another is a stand for your laptop, which can make it, just be ergonomic at the level of your eyes, and then buy external Bluetooth keyboard for it, and maybe a trackpad or a mouse. So whenever you're somewhere else, you can do the same thing. If what you're doing at home.
Or you can buy a painkiller in a pharmacy store as well.
Yeah.
If needed.
Well, yeah. The thing is, after some age, you need to put more effort. To your back problems probably, and take more painkillers maybe.
Take more painkillers. No, but actually I agree that when you travel abroad, it's sometimes tricky to get the right setup. So
yeah, I mean, all those photographs with laptops in a tent, overlooking a valley or a canyon or whatever, right? They're great. But if anyone have ever tried to work on a laptop on a floor with their back bent, they know that you can sustain it for a couple of minutes, and then it just hurts. It's not a good setup for actual like focused work. Yeah. So, folks, I guess like we have time for one more question, and then we could slowly wrap it up. So a good question would be how do you build a sense of belonging with remote, and if it's more challenging in the office, than in the remote. And I think it's like it is much different. There's just other challenges that with the office and with remote work, and the value propositions must be on a different, I think, on a different level. So whether you go and meet folks and integrate with on events where when part of the team or the whole team from around the world meets, or you have some common interests. But I think it's a lot of the challenges come from the fact that human beings just like to interact with others. I guess maybe I'll do my hypothesis that most of people like to do it, and some maybe not. But I think yes, it is challenging. The sense of belonging is one of the biggest struggles and challenges in remote work. But there are ways to do it, and it's similar in the office. Like you might be coming to the office and you still feel completely disconnected, and and actually a lot of this may the actions that the company take may feel fake, and you're forced that you have to attend something that you don't even want to attend because you don't like it, you don't have you don't feel like it. So but we'll let maybe some of you want to give your experience on that, this like other works, how difficult it is to kind of get this sense of belonging in remote work.
Also, we have one question from someone on YouTube.
Good. Okay. Yes. The question was, can remote work be fun for a team? What do you do with the team in breaks without table football or fruit Thursday? It's a good question.
I just drink alone.
So I guess it might actually be aligned with the question about sense of belonging, because going through those activities together is something that builds a lot of connections. So maybe someone finds a way to actually reply to both of those questions at the same time.
I think I can answer that. So first of all, well, it's probably impossible to know beforehand, but find a place which supports remote work, and you're probably gonna figure that out after, I don't know, 3 or something months of working there. So whenever you feel lonely or abandoned, just reach out to your manager, because it's much easier to become invisible when you work remotely in a different time zone, especially if you just do your work and nobody sees you. That can make you feel very, very, very abandoned. So first place of contact would be your manager, and if the person can take care of that, they probably do something to help you. Maybe even to the level of the whole organization, which is actually something we do in our team. We have those game days, which are just like hour and a half for us to play either board games or GeoGuessr or Scribble, which is this game where you draw stuff and then somebody guesses it, and then somebody else draws something based on that guess, and so on, so on, so on. So be open about it. Be proactive about maybe seeking out help or even suggesting some activities to do. But because there are definitely games that you can play online, or even schedule a one-on-one with your teammates. Do it like a coffee break, similar that you would do in a real office, but just remotely via Slack or Zoom or whatever. So these are probably the easiest solutions. But if that doesn't help, there might be some deeper things going on, but that's probably out of the scope of this conversation.
Okay, thanks. Michał Miszczyszyn had raised the hand, wanted to ask something.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to engage people, and I think there are books about it, so there is no time to discuss all of them. But I just wanted to mention something completely different, that working remotely doesn't necessarily mean that you don't meet in person. Like Art and Chris and I, we worked from a co-working office just on this Monday, and we are meeting with other people from 11 Sigma on Saturday and Sunday this week. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you never meet. You can just have your tables football just while working remotely. Why not?
Yeah, and I think this is a good summary. So remote work doesn't mean that people are literally remote. It's a matter of whether the organization is remote first or just happens to hire some people remotely and they don't know how to manage this. If a company knows and is focused on this, like we actually have lots of those on-site meetings or other activities. I remember for Michał Miszczyszyn's onboarding, we went to Warsaw in Poland and we tried beating each other on Counter-Strike and very late in the night, and beforehand we spent the whole day together doing different stuff. So getting better at each other. So getting to know each other better and
for instance,
like
I
think it's a matter of organization. Yeah.
I met my coworker from Pakistan in Istanbul last week, so
yeah,
it was
yeah.
fun. And
So like.
Even
so
though
like
he is
this,
from so far away, we were able to meet, and it was actually pretty fun. So it's totally
you,
possible.
Mateusz, and that other like this guy you met so far away from Nomad, yes. And then I remember two of our folks. I think that was Jakub and Domagoj.
We met in Croatia.
You met in Croatia, or some. I think it was Marcel and I don't remember who, but
Jakub
J met on Cyprus. Spontaneously, they happened to be by accident. They happened to just eat in the same restaurant. So it doesn't mean you're alone. It means the management team and the company has to unblock and kind of empower meeting and connecting and this sense of belonging. If that happens, it's all good. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap this up. So thanks everyone for listening and for staying with us, whoever joined us. And yes, bye-bye and see you next time. Take care. Bye.
This was fun.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.